8 o'clock? Or 9
In the
o'clock?
morning?
Or 9 o'clock? Or
All right.
so we're on Kuf Mem Ches Amud Beis, the Mishnah, on the bottom. Tonight we're going to be doing 149.
Tomorrow night is a daf. Tomorrow morning or tomorrow night?
Tomorrow morning, 8:45.
Oh, morning.
a.m.
Okay, you were yeah.
And the Navi Shir at 8 o'clock at night. Mish Mona Adam es Orchosav the Asparperosav Mipi. A person can recite a list of people that he's inviting for lunch or dinner and calculate how many loaves of bread he'll need, how many desserts he'll need. Avalom aksav. You're not allowed to read from a list that was prepared from Friday. We'll see. The Gemara is going to give a gzeira. If you're going to read that, you're going to read documents, business documents, and contracts. So the gzeira, you can't read a prepared list. So you could draw lots to who's going to get which portion, who's going to get the pulka, who's going to get the fliegel, who's going to get the thigh, with your children. Not with anybody else, but with your children at the table. As long as you can't do a calculation, well, he's going to get a bigger piece, he's going to get a smaller piece, and that you can't do. Because then the one who gets the bigger piece will have to make up with the one who got the smaller piece, and that will be a calculation that, again, because of Shabbos, we want you to avoid not do. They could. Rashi says gora, like drawing lots. The Kohanim could say who's going to do which korban. You'll do a chatis, you'll do a shlomim, but they couldn't do it based on the portions that were divvied up. The Gemara will explain that as well. Now the Gemara asks, my timer, why can't we read the list? You prepared a list from Friday. You're going to have 10 guests at your Shabbos table. You're not allowed to look at that list to plan on Shabbos how many challahs to lay out, how many desserts to lay out. So Rabbi Yomer Gzer Shema Yimchok. We're concerned you're going to come to erase one of the name. Maybe Rashi says you didn't prepare enough food. He'll regret that he invited too many people. He'll erase it. Because they used to give this list to like a waiter, who would, maybe they would go fetch these people, or who would be allowed in. So you can't read from a list because you might erase it. Abaya Amar Gzer Shama Yikra B'Shnoi Het Yotos. Right? It says Mimtzo Chavatzecha. You may not do business you may not talk about business on Shabbos. So you cannot read the list because maybe you're going to come read other contracts, other receipts. What's my binayu? Can you give me a practical scenario that would differentiate between these two reasons? It could be binayu, the cause of akotul midli. It wasn't written on a piece of paper. It was written on the wall high up, where it's hard to reach. So, according to the svar that you're going to come to erase, it's too high to erase. But but if the purposes of the prohibition is to prevent you from reading any document, So even this is reading this document will also be a problem. Chayshina. Now, the person who held that the Gzeira is because of erasing, why isn't he worried about the Gzeira that maybe you'll reach Star Hadyotas? He should be worried about that too. Visu. Why should we say that just because something was written high up, that you're not going to come to erase it, right? L'shema yimchok lo chayshina. I'll show you an example where we are chayshina. Latanya. Well, yikra la'oran there. The person should not read on Shabbos by candlelight because you might tip the candle to make it easier to read, and you might spill some of the oil, so you're going to be mechabe. It also touches muktzah. And the gzeira is a low plug type of gzeira. We don't care how high it is, even though you can't reach it. We're concerned that if you're allowed to read by candle, you read by even a closed candle. So when the Chacham made the prohibition, it made it as a low plug. It's a general prohibition. So even if you wrote something high on the wall, you see that the height of something, once there's a gzeira, there's a gzeira. So we go back to the question, what's the nafkamina? Ikibinayu, the cost of akoisel umitasi. He wrote it on the wall, but he wrote it low down so you could erase it. Right? The one who was worried about erasure, well, it's within range of erasure. Because people are not going to confuse reading something that's written on the wall versus reading a star. Okay, but that Manda Amar, who says that we're not worried about reading a star, right? Why shouldn't he be worried that if it's written on the wall low down, he might come to erase it? The Gemara accepts that. We're back to the question, what's the nafkamina between the two shitas? It was written on a tablet, which is engraved in the tablet. It's not written. If something's engraved, it's not easy to erase. Right? We're not cautious of erasure if it's engraved in a tablet. But you're reading, so that it might, we're cautious that you're going to read other stories. Fine. Let him be worried. You come to read staros. Maybe you'll tell me that people are they're going to know this is a tablet that's engraved. A star is written on paper. They're not going to confuse the two things. Vatanya, we have a brayso. Moina Adam kamen b'viftim v'kamen b'bachutz. You can count how many chairs you have inside, how many chairs you have outside. In terms of where you're going to seat your guests. It's more chashuv to seat guests inside. These things you can calculate from something written on a wall. But you can't read it from a tablet. If it was written, it can't be written in ink. What would be the difference between the two cases? It was engraved. Ukitani, michtav shal gabi akoiso. You can only read from something on the wall, but lo michtav shal gabi pinchas. So people will confuse reading from a tablet with reading from a star. We're back to our question. What's the nafkamina between the two reasons? Okay, it says the Gemara, Lo'ilam dekosav hakoisel midli. We go back to our original answer that we're talking about. It was written on a high wall. We brought up a rice that says even if it's high, we're choishish. But it's not so poshut because the Rabba Tanoihi, this issue of whether we declare a low plug type of gzeira is machlekes Tanoim. The Tanya. Moina Artemis or Choisav is parproisav mipi. Person can count his guests without a list. He can do it by heart. Avalom and Aksav. Ravacha allows for a writing on a wall. If it's written low, why did they allow? And allow because of umidli. He wrote it high. And yet we're not choishish of Shema Yimchok. So it's a machlokas whether this gzer was done as a low plug. Shema Minani Rabba Tanoi. It's a machlokas Tanoi, and that's you can explain our case. Shema Minani. V'hani Tanoi Kani Tanoi. There's another machlokas Tanoim that deals with the same concept. Tanya. Ein roin b'mara b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to look at a mirror on Shabbos. Reb Meir matir b'mara kavua b'koisel. Reb Meir allows you to look into a mirror that's hanging on a wall. Now, ma'ishna kavua b'koisel. See, we're concerned that you're going to look in the mirror. You have a hair sticking out of your hair or a beard, and you're going to want to go get a scissor and cut it. So why should be a difference? So when it's hanging on the wall, so you have to walk a certain distance to your bathroom to get a scissor. By the time he gets here, he'll remember that I'm not allowed to do it. So the Gemara says, Shena Kabu Anami. If you have a mirror, a handheld mirror, so it's going to remember. So the Gemara says, no. We're talking about a metal mirror. You're going to use the sharp edge of the metal mirror to cut the hair. And you have it right in your hand, you're going to use it. There's no time for you to remember, I'm not allowed to do this on Shabbat. Let's say there was a painting or some kind of statue that was made depicting some historical event. Animal, says Rashi, or like the battle of David and Goliath. And then people will write underneath it like a legend, which explains what it is. Also, the Krosa b'Shabbos. You can't read that either, because you're going to come to read Shtarois on Shabbos. Now, looking at the picture, you're not allowed to look at it. Mishum shenemar al tifnu el ha'elilim, meaning al tifnu el midatchem. You can't look at something that you come up with your mind, and it's going to remind you when you look at it, because it violates the issur of looking at a statue or painting. If it's an avodah zarah.
But then why are you allowed to have it in your house?
We're not talking about having. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to have it in your house.
All right.
And if you remember, we learned a lot of this in the Yoredea Shir about what you're allowed to have, what you're not allowed to have in the machlokas, right? Some say you're allowed to have, astronomical pictures. Some say you're not.
Yes,
we
the
went
moon.
Through,
yes, yes. I remember
we went
the
through
moon.
all of that.
All right.
Okay. I'm going to get a tissue because I have allergies. So 1 second. $100, and you say you got to pay me back 110. Give him a tom of ribbis, but it's not real ribbis, says Rashi, because it's all yours. But you're teaching them the concept that they'll stay away from it. So the Gemara says, "Yachi mana gedola keneged mana ktani nami." So then, why did the Mishnah say you can't do a lottery at the table with your children? You get one big piece, you get a little bit. Why not? That'll teach them the concept of ribbis. Or says Enachanami, you're allowed to do it. And the Mishnah was missing words. Even giving one a bigger piece, a smaller piece. My time, my time, it's like playing gambling. Which is gezel. Because asmachta, when you gamble, you never really wanted to lose. So therefore you expect it to win. So when you lose money gambling, it's like the other guy's a gosler. He's basically relying on the fact that he's going to win, but it's not coined for him. Therefore, so when he takes money from you in gambling, it's considered gezel. If he knew he was going to lose, he wouldn't have done it in the first place. Then we said matilin chaloshin. The kohanim can make a lottery which korban they're going to do. My avalol amonos, but they can't do it. Who's going to get which piece? They cannot do it. Let's say on Friday for yesterday's yontif. Pshita, Ma'adisem Holuk Sivam Chakim Rivei Koyen. I feel a manas to Chol Nami. Kohanim always fight, so maybe we'll permit it, even on Yontif. So Kamash Malan that no, we don't allow it because to avoid fighting. Rav Yaakov, brother of Rav Yaakov, Kol Shechaber Nena Shal Yodo. If you are the cause of somebody else doing a sin, such a person is not allowed into the Mechitza of Kadosh Baruch Hu. How do we know it? Vayomer Hashem, Mi yifate es Achav. Achav was a very evil king. And so Hashem said, who's going to seduce Achav? The Ya'al v'yipol b'maski lad, and trick him so he'll reach his downfall. Vayomer zebecho v'zomer b'cho. Each one got up and said, let me do it, let me do it. Vayetzei haruach vayomer livnei Hashem, vayomer ani afatem. Then the ruach of Novos was a person who had a vineyard next to the palace of Achav. And Achav stole his palace, stole his vineyard, and ended up killing him. So the spirit of Novos said, I will seduce him. I will be an evil spirit by his Nevi'im. We're going to learn this Mitzvah Hashem and Sefer Malachim, this whole story, when we get there. My Ruach, what was this Ruach? Amr Avich is a Ruach Shel Navois. It's Navois who, this person, who was killed by Achav, who might say, that means even an evil person like Achav, and that Navois wanted to make him sin, even so Hashem threw him out of his mechitza. Means if you're the instrument of somebody sinning, it's not a good thing. Maybe it's for a different reason, because he was a doiver sheker. And maybe that's why he was thrown out of the Mechitza. So the Gemara says, you're right. Ela me'acha. There's another source. Sovata kalon mikavod shtei, gam ata ve'arel. This is a very bizarre story about Nebuchadnezzar. Those who were in Yavne, we heard some stories about Nebuchadnezzar today. But Nebuchadnezzar, when he would conquer the kings of different countries, he would put them in his palace, and he would commit homosexual acts with them as a way to humiliate them. And when he took Tzidkiyahu HaMelech captive, he tried to do it to him, and his foreskin grew, and it was an embarrassment to him, to Nebuchadnezzar. So, Savat Klami Kavod Zen Nebuchadnezzar. Shtei Gam Atavar El Tzidkiyahu. So, and even so, if Tzidkiyahu was punished, because he was the cause of Nebuchadnezzar to be punished. So the Gemara doesn't accept this story as a source. One shot is because the whole psukim is going on Nebuchadnezzar. The Od, Tzidkiyahu Tzadika, Ma'avle Mevidle. What do you mean? Tzidkiyahu was a tzaddik. What did you expect the tzaddik to do? Right? When it happened, Tzidkiyahu didn't cause it. It says when Nebuchadnezzar wanted to commit this act with Tzidkiyahu, Hashem made it so that his foreskin grew. So that's not a source for this principle either. Ela me'acha. Gam anosh l'tzadik lo tov. That if you are the cause of a punishment, even for a tzaddik, it's not good. Ein lo tov ela ra. Lo tov means it's bad. Uksiv, ki lo el chefetz rasha atali gercha ra. Tzadikat Hashem v'lo yagur b'mchor ra. Hashem will not allow a person that was the cause of somebody else's downfall to be within his area. Now, we said the Mishnah used the language of chaloshim to mean lottery. My mashmadai chaloshim lishna depurahu. Where do we see it that chaloshim means a lottery? From the word purim, right? Hipil pur. Pur is a lottery. D'chsiv eich nafat mishamayim helo ben shachar nigdat la'aretz chodesh al goyim. That's a pasuk in Yeshaya. Nebuchadnezzar had all these thousands or hundreds of kings in his palace, and he would do a lottery. Who would he have homosexuality with that day? Later, Eza ben Yom Shel Mishkav Zoch. Uksiv, Kol Malchei Goyim Kulam. Every king was afraid, waiting for his day. Rav Yochanan, but the day when Nebuchadnezzar died, they were happy because Shenochu b'mishkav zachor. They didn't have to worry about being attacked. Rav Yochanan kol yomav shelo sorosh lo nitzas chok b'pekol birya. When Nebuchadnezzar was alive, nobody smiled. Shene'amar. When Nebuchadnezzar died, the world was quiet and happiness came back. Until his death, there was no happiness. You may not go visit the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. You can't stand there because of terrible things that happened there. There are demons there. When Nebuchadnezzar wanted to humiliate Tzidkiyahu HaMelech this way, his foreskin grew 300 yards. It surrounded everybody. So about the klon mikavod should say gamatave arel. Arel bigamatra shlosh masav. Arel is 300. That's how they know that his foreskin grew 300. Amrav Yud Amrav. Shosh Yirana Osu Rosh LeGehenom. When Nebuchadnezzar came down to Gehenna, Rosh would call your day Gehenna. Every Gehenna was afraid that he was going to now come to Gehenna and be the king there. Maybe he's going to come to suffer like us. Means Nebuchadnezzar was going to be treated like everybody else in Gehenna. He was not going to be a moishel there. Eich Shavas Noigeis Shavsa Madheva. It's another pasuk in Yechezkel. Avid Amarav Shavsa Umazu Sha'amar Medod Havei. That means even if the Bavel lost all their wealth, even though they had a lot of gold, but they lost it. There's a cycle. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Okay. We'll learn tomorrow the next one.